Hello and welcome to the Armenian News Network Groong Week in Review for January 11, 2026. Today we're talking with Arthur Martirosyan, an international negotiations and conflict management expert. Hello, Arthur. Welcome back to the Groong podcast.
Good evening. I'm glad to be with you this evening.
Welcome to Groong, Arthur. Nice to have you back.
Thank you. Thank you, Hovik.
All right. So we are recording this on January 13, 2026, and the Ukraine war is now 1,419 days old. That is one day longer than the 1,418 days of the Great Patriotic War, or what is known also as the Soviet front of the World War II. While Russia has poured in resources into Ukraine, its room to maneuver elsewhere has narrowed, or at least it seems that way. And rivals and partners alike have tested its reach. In that period, Russia's position has also taken visible hits or strains. We can recall Artsakh in 2023, Syria, Venezuela, with other pressure points, I think not even worth mentioning, such as South Caucasus and Central Asia. Arthur, to begin, how would you characterize Russia's foreign policy, especially in the context of the Ukraine war, over the last 4 years?
Well, Ukraine is just part of that war because it's clearly a proxy war. Without the significant assistance from the West and now from Europeans, this war probably could end much earlier. Therefore, it's not just a war with Ukraine, it's a war for changing the security architecture in the perception of Vladimir Putin and the Kremlin. And their perception has been that they cannot allow NATO to expand to include a country like Ukraine. So this confrontation is not just with Ukraine, it's really broader with the West. Well, the U.S. Under Trump administration has changed its strategy somewhat, but essentially what's at stake here for Russia is what kind of a landscape, a strategic and geopolitical landscape they're going to have after they are done with the war or achieve at least part of their goals. In terms of the outcome of this war, I think way back at the outset, I've never had any doubts how it's going to end. Ukraine doesn't stand a chance winning this war. It's a different matter on where it stops, what would be the configuration again. And a bigger issue for me has always been whether Russia is going to win the peace after that war. So you were right. Obviously, a war like this is a huge strain on the economy under sanctions, the economy that needs lots of technologies that the country doesn't have. It means that they need to buy it somewhere. And they have expanded the production of both missiles and especially the FUVs, drones. This war is unlike any other war, basically new technological war. And therefore comparisons with World War II are somewhat far-fetched when it comes to me, right? I mean, you should not expect the same kind of use of massive offensive at a human cost, although human cost is very high of this war, but it's in no comparison to what was happening in World War II. The second important difference, both for Ukraine and Russia, is that while they are at war, some parts of the countries continue to live as if there is no war. And you do not need to get pictures from the skiing resort Bukovel from Ukraine to understand that for some Ukrainians, it doesn't really matter. Although things have changed since this January, and escalation was predictable. That escalation is necessary for Zelensky to prove that he still can win this one. I don't know who he's trying to persuade, but those who want to be persuaded are Europeans. why Europeans want to be persuaded. When I say Europeans, I mean the leadership of the European Union, where various European countries, why they need to do that, because there is a huge paradigmatic shift in geopolitics, and it's related again to Trump administration's decision to gradually withdraw from active participation in European affairs, kind of limit and participate only when it comes to solving some transactional issues related to security. So that leaves Europeans almost alone in the Yalta-Potsdam world order that gave them the protection, the umbrella of the United States, is likely to disappear again in the perception of Europeans, and I think the Trump administration has grounds to believe that that's the case. Whether that's going to be happening or not, what's going to happen if Trump administration again is replaced by Democrats, that's for future. But that also gives them some way of hoping that maybe even after elections this fall in the U.S., Congress changes and some of the rhetoric, at least, of Trump will be subdued. Also, they hope that a change may happen with the next elections, but they need to buy some time to revamp their militaries, to also start producing military hardware at a scale that is necessary to prepare for the future war. So that means that as long as the war continues in Ukraine, they have that time, they have that window to use and to prepare for if they are left with Russia without the American umbrella, and if Russia is going to take Ukraine, it's going to be a disaster in their understanding of what's coming for Europe in terms of that security, new security arrangements and architecture. So in light of this, we are not likely to see a very quick end to this war. Some have been saying, even last year, very smart people I was talking to that were saying that, oh, Trump is very serious, is now going to engage very actively, and he's going to stop this war very soon. I was saying that Putin is not likely to take that. Why? Because he's ready to stop the war, but only on his terms. And the terms have been clearly outlined in that ultimatum, essentially, that they set in December 22, right before the war. So they want to stop. If they are stopping the war, it has to be on their terms. What are Europeans doing? Europeans are giving Zelensky another agreement, and they think that Russia should accept that agreement, which is in many ways contrary to what Russians have in their minds. So very unlikely that Russia is going to stop. If they're going to continue, what are the implications for the economy? I'm not an economist, but I can see how the sanctions that didn't really produce much of effect initially, just like with Iran, they significantly impact the economy. I cannot say now how exactly the Russian economy has suffered over years. I'm not an economist, but that's going to be one of the factors. Another factor is certainly how fast Russians are going to be moving this year in terms of territories that they conquer. And that depends also on Ukraine's ability to mobilize, which has been one of the most serious weaknesses in their preparedness to this war, right? It's not just hardware. They need men in the front line. And yes, the drones help kind of hold Russians back, their offensives. But in the drone warfare, Ukraine does no longer have an upper hand. So I'm not into prediction of what and how the war is going to end, but I'm saying that these two factors are going to be very important. In my understanding, and that's something that I've been saying from the very outset, Russia could not quickly take some of the lines that had been prepared very meticulously in terms of military engineering by Ukraine along Slaviansk and Kramatorsk. And these are the two strongholds that the fighting is going to center this year, I think. But after these strongholds fall, what's going to come next is the plain, the steppe, which is less prepared in terms of resistance to Russians, quite the same way it was done in Donbass. And once the war moves beyond that point, the pace is very difficult to predict, but I think it's going to be much faster, even to the Dnieper River. So that's the understanding that I think even the U.S. military experts and strategists have, and that's what made Trump say, agree now because later you're going to lose more. Whether that's going to be the case and how much more Ukraine is going to lose before they say we're stopping, it's not clear to me because the support of Europeans hasn't dwindled yet. But that issue also is problematic because European leaders have now to continue to persuade their taxpayers that the money that they're sending to Ukraine is protecting them, right? It's for their own security.
Right.
And I think we can see major developments, shifts among various Ukrainian supporting players in Europe next year or this year.
I think that's a good summary, but I still am concerned in terms of the trade-off that Russia seems to be making in terms of time versus leverage. Is there any upside that you can see that Russia has achieved over the last 4 years in terms of strategic leverage, even if it's potential upside in the future world order sense? Because from my perspective, or from the perspective of some, there are a lot of downsides, such as I guess the retreats that it's Russia seems to be making, especially not being too involved with Iran. We'll talk Iran a little bit more later today. So, do you think that time is working in Russia's favor, and where do you think that Russia has a upper hand in terms of, what strategic area do you think Russia has the upper hand, and what does Russia stand to gain from a victory in this war?
Well, I mean, territory is important. If they gain territory in Ukraine, that's going to be one. But as I said, their strategic end goal is not just Ukraine, defeating militarily Ukraine. It's how they redefine the architecture and how they force Europeans and maybe even Americans to come to the table to discuss those terms of how that architecture is going to look like. Well, it doesn't matter what we think about Russian strategies and leverage, strategic leverage. What matters is what the leadership of Russia thinks right now and how they evaluate the importance of continuing this war. And at this point, I'm talking about my understanding of how they see the value in this. In terms of what gains they've had, I mean, they've gained the Azov Sea, they've gained Mariupol, they've gained land connection to Crimea. They have gotten a lot. I mean, you cannot diminish those gains. But at the same time, I understand people who are looking at this and saying, or as Trump was saying, this war, they should have ended it in very quickly. Americans could have ended it very quickly.
He says that it should have never started.
Well, I mean, yes, I don't agree with that. I don't think any military, including the American military, could have really gotten a very quick win militarily here. It's not a cake that you are slicing and taking a piece after a piece. And what Americans can do, we saw in partially in Afghanistan, and I mean, I'm not even going back to Vietnam, right? It all depends on how much the other side is ready to resist, how much the other side has resources and power to resist. And the two other components, that's the power, resources, and hardware, has been an intelligence, most importantly, intelligence. Ukraine couldn't have gotten into this war on its own without all these components. Now, if they're getting and continue to get those components, I think Putin is determined to show that he's going to overcome the European and the Western support of Ukraine. And that is going to be an important leverage for him in that negotiation, at the table of revamping the security architecture. And not surprisingly, I mean, they could have chosen a different target, right? Why they used the second Oreshnik against this enterprise in Lviv? It's not just to destroy an enterprise that is producing drones, presumably, but it's also showing Europeans that it's going to get very close to their doorsteps. Because from Lviv to Poland and even to Germany, it's really a stone throw.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm going to turn our attention to Iran. And it's a good thing we said Happy New Year already, because it hasn't been 2 weeks and all signs are pointing towards a direct US and Israeli confrontation with Iran already. In recent weeks, analysts have been warning that Israel will probably prefer a showdown with Iran sooner than later, preempting any surprises in the US midterm elections in November of this year, 2026. And over the past few days, Iran has seen major unrest tied to economic stress and political anger. But a nationwide internet shutdown has made it very difficult for everyone outside to estimate the death toll, and the basic facts are hard to verify. In that context, just today, I believe, President Trump publicly urged Iranians on Truth Social. He wrote, "Keep protesting," in big letters, and take over your institutions. Help is on the way. And I don't remember if that was him saying it or it was Lindsey Graham saying it, but yeah, it seems like the drums of war are loud right now. Anyway, he also announced the policy shift. He put a 25% tariff effective immediately on any country that does business with Iran. Of course, this would hit Armenia if enforced as stated. At the same time, pro-Azerbaijani propagandists are signaling readiness. There's one fellow at the Hudson Institute, Luke Coffey, who simply posted, "Be prepared, Azerbaijan." You decide what you read into that. In the South Caucasus, that kind of messaging is really terrible, because a regional war, it can spread like wildfire, basically. So what are the likely goals of a renewed war against Iran? Is it going to be regime change? Is it degrading a nuclear program? Is it rolling back regional networks? All of the above? Help us out.
Well, I think for the last 30 years, we've seen Israel going after their enemies one by one, right? I mean, starting with Iraq, we continue to.
It's almost like a checklist.
Places like Libya, right? I mean, and Czech, Syria, gone, Lebanon, Hezbollah diminished, Hamas in Gaza weakened almost. Unable to continue at the same scale operations against Israel. The last on their list was Iran, and we're getting close to their wish list, fulfilling their wish list, so to say. They tried it. I think the assumptions behind the strikes against Iran, the 12-day war, or whatever it was not just to destroy their capability to develop nuclear weapons. I think there was a hope that the strikes would bring protest into the streets and there would be implosion. But the contrary happened. So the strikes unified people. Now but the strategy was not given up entirely. I mean, because as I said, I mean, for Israel, if they can solve the problem of Iranian threat, it means that they are significantly, if not entirely, changing the positioning of that country in the Middle East. And I think right after that short war. I was asked whether it's over now, they're going to go and find a peace deal. I said no. I mean, the goals hadn't been accomplished. Why should they give up on those goals now? And the next wave, I said then, would be the attempts to engineer social implosion. But to engineer social implosion from outside, you need some grounds inside, right? And yes, some of the elements of that implosion have been in place, in part the separatist movements in Iran, including Azerbaijan. But the most critical one has been the economic worsening situation. I don't know the exact numbers. I've been hearing different things, but you know the food going up in price 75% and even more in some cases. So the socioeconomic conditions are there, but there is also fatigue with the regime, especially with the younger generation. You have about 9% unemployment. They graduate from universities, and there is not much of employment or anything. So the regime has internal cleavages or seams that can be used by outside players. And that's what is happening now. And as President Trump was speculating on options, including the military option, I think he was saying he was trying diplomacy, and he was even saying that he was going to negotiate with Iranians. Iranians are asking to negotiate, he was saying. But then quickly that changed to more strict tariffs, economic one. But he's saying also the military option is not removed from the table. The only thing that deters that military option, strikes against some internal affairs or the Revolutionary Guard's assets in Iran, is that strikes can again bring back the counter-mobilization in Iran. So whether the Iranian regime is going to be able to hold against this wave of implosion, it's hard to say, but we can see how the also diaspora, Iranian diaspora has been mobilized from outside.
Yeah.
Trump mentioned also psychological warfare against Iran. That also is happening, obviously. So we'll see what happens. I mean, but you're right. I mean, if this is going to turn into a full-scale warfare, which is a scenario that cannot be excluded, how it can turn into one if the U.S. strikes and Iranians are good on their promise that they'll be striking at American bases in the region, destroying them, and striking at Israel again. I don't know what their capacity to do that is, but obviously that is not going to be a scenario that can be quickly de-escalated. On the contrary.
We've had Iranian protests here in Los Angeles, as a matter of fact, and there was an incident a couple of days ago when somebody drove into the crowd. I'm not sure exactly what happened afterwards. I haven't paid that much attention to it. But in my experience, a lot of the diaspora, the Iranian diaspora for the last 40 years is post-1979 diaspora. And they're very pro-Shah because a lot of them actually had to leave property, wealth behind. It's a little, to me, it just feels almost like it's a Cuban situation from a different country. You know, there's a diaspora that had to leave a lot behind because of the government change. But as far as these riots and the protests are concerned, to you, do they look organic? Do they look opportunistic? Do they look externally curated, or some mix? Because I suspect that their real nature, the root cause of these things, is probably going to determine exactly how the government responds to them. If they think that these guys are disgruntled because they're unemployed, there's going to be a lot of sympathy, and I think that their government has indicated that. But if they find that these are basically CIA and Mossad-led NGOs that are taking to the streets, they're not going to care anything about them. They're just going to mow them down.
I don't think there are NGOs in Iran that are openly led by Mossad and CIA, but
not openly.
To be sure, Mossad has a significant network in Iran, and they demonstrated that during that 12-day war, because much of the activity targeting missiles and even targeting and attacking from within Iran was operated by Mossad networks and operatives on the ground in Iran. So that can be a factor. But as I said, no external player can engineer something if there is no ground for that, right? They wait for the ground. And even if we look back not into 1979, but 1956, so the coup in 1956, there were segments frustrated with the democratic regime of Iran at the time, and they were used in that. And those segments could be within the military, within the business, various factors. And also, we should not forget one important factor, that regime change in Iran is almost approaching 40 years now. All right, and in 40 years, the Guard, the Revolutionary Guard, has also undergone change, a change of guards, and new blood has entered that most important, probably from internal security segment. And there are rivalries. There is infighting within. Ayatollah himself is, I think, approaching 98, maybe 86 or something.
He's 86 or 87.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So there are all sorts of various factors that have played into this, and once outside players see the opportunity, they activate whatever resources and assets they have to support them. Trump's words, although rhetoric, right? But imagine you are in the streets of Iran, you are a protester, and someone says, "Do you know what Trump said?" Trump said, "Hold on, go on, burn the buildings. We are coming. Help is underway." Reminds me also, we talked about 1956. In 1956, Budapest, when the Soviet tanks rolled into the city, there was also hope among the Hungarians at the time that the West is going to come and help us. But it never happened. It never materialized. And it even made things worse in terms of that hope among Hungarians after 1956. Here, I think that when Trump says help is underway, I'm not sure if striking buildings in or bunkers or eliminating some of the leadership of the Revolutionary Guard is going to help with the situation. Whether they have other options on the table, I don't know, but I don't think that Trump is considering boots on the ground. I think that one is essentially ruled out. Short of that, other options may further destabilize the country or bring in protracted destabilization, but not the fall of the regime per se.
Okay, so I have a couple of questions, Arthur. One of them is, how will Armenia be affected if there's a 25% tariff that hits dealing with Iran? Because a huge amount, I think it's 30% of a lot of our trade goes through the Armenian-Iranian border at Mehri. And the other thing is, since you are a negotiations and conflict management expert, is there an off-ramp to this, let's call it US-Iranian conflict right now?
Well, I think I'll start from the last question. I think this conflict in the triangle, Israel, United States, and Iran, is framed in zero sum. I don't think they can come to some kind of an agreement unless the regime in Iran changes. Nothing else is going to be acceptable for Israel, because they see it as an existential threat to them, right? Similarly, Iranian regime, I think they see the big Satan, small Satan. We know the rhetoric, right? For them, the United States and Israel are existential threat, and they are not ready to find any solutions at the table, because that problem doesn't have a solution. Other issues can find solutions. Even the nuclear deal could have been achieved had it not been also tied somehow to this, I'd say, security issue of Iran, right? Once they felt that their security is under serious threat, they thought that one way to avoid it is going nuclear, just like North Korea did. Right. So it, in some ways, even fastened that thinking that we need nuclear weapons and not giving up. And they are, again, producing new missiles, new delivery systems. So the issue is not easily going to be resolved. And there is no player who could mediate this. I mean, I cannot see Russia or European Union or any other player who can offer good faith mediation to the sides in this conflict.
But
So,
could Russia and China do what Europe does for Ukraine, just basically keep Iran fighting, so that essentially whoever's going to go against Iran, whether it's the United States or Israel, they just get into a long attrition war with a huge country?
no, that is likely, and that's why I said the boots on the ground is
Mm.
almost ruled out, not just for the U.S. but for Israel too. I don't think anyone would dare to risk that kind of engagement
Hmm.
in Iran.
Right.
As to the 25% for all who trade with Iran, I think it's a statement. We're going to see when it comes to more fine-grained details in implementation. What does that mean for all the countries who trade with Iran? And the number of the countries who still trade with Iran, um, uh, because some of the trade is not sanctioned with Iran. So the countries who continue to trade with Iran, how are they going to respond to this rhetoric from trade on trade with Iran from Trump? If he signs it as a decree, I have heard the statement. We haven't seen a decree signed yet. If he signs it and he decrees it, we'll see what is going to be a response from other countries. But for Armenia, it's going to be painful. But one of the outcomes I can see the regime here in Yerevan saying, trying to turn it as an opportunity for them to continue their praise of their trade with Azerbaijan now, and saying,
Hmm.
see, we were so smart, we could see that this could come. We started to get oil, gasoline from Azerbaijan to offset potential issues in the trade with Iran. But that is problematic in itself. They can use it as a PR thing, but I don't think a trade of Armenia with Azerbaijan can really replace all the elements in trade with Iran, because logistically even it's a very important route for Armenian exports through
Yes.
Iran.
Yes.
And if that also is going to be taxed or tariffed, as Trump is saying, I don't know how that is going to impact the Armenian economy. It's going to make things much more complicated here in terms of supplies, in terms of gains from that trade.
Yeah. Yeah. Arthur, I want to bring your attention and that of our listeners and viewers um, to Baku 36 years ago. Of course, I'm talking about the large wave of anti-Armenian violence that erupted in Baku around this time 36 years ago. Crowds filled the streets, chanting slogans like "Hail the heroes of Sumgait," "Death to Armenians," and "Long live Baku without Armenians." Organizers broke the mob into smaller groups and, according to accounts, pre-distributed weapons and maps marking Armenian apartments, and the rest, as we say, is history. But to this day, the death toll remains unknown. No full criminal case was pursued, and no one was held accountable. Estimates commonly cited put the dead in the hundreds. with some victims later dying from severe injuries. The end result, of course, was also the complete depopulation of Baku from Armenians. For many Armenians, the lasting wound is not only what happened in 1990, those awful events, but what followed, which is the normalization of hatred of Armenians in public life in Azerbaijan. Those who once had Armenian neighbors and in rare cases helped them are largely gone today. And a new generation has grown up under a state narrative that treats Armenians as permanent enemies, despite the Pashinyan's rhetoric and what Aliyev may sometimes, blurt out. So can you share your reflections on this 26th anniversary of the Baku pogroms of Armenians?
Well, I think it was still the Soviet Union, and the Soviets, again, were the leadership in Moscow, were a couple of days late with General Lebed entering the city and also almost taking the city as a hostile city. The outcome of that was essentially before that. There was still a chance to find a negotiated solution to Karabakh. But after what happened in Baku and Sumgait, and as you correctly stated, largely unpunished, there were a couple who were sentenced after Sumgait, but not after Baku. There was obviously a move of Azerbaijanis from Armenia to Azerbaijan, and the conflict got a configuration of zero sum. We either get our right to live on the land of our ancestors and in Karabakh, or we have to leave. That was the outcome of those decisions made in Baku at the time. Whether that's the National Front or the National Front and the Communist Party of the time, collusion between them to scare Armenians, right? I mean, that's one of the goals of these pogroms was that, right? So we know what happened next. I mean, next was a war in Karabakh. Really took a different scale. We know how the first war ended, and we know what happened now. I mean, essentially, unfortunately, those who were conducting those pogroms in 1990 in Baku are probably still alive. Quite a few of them were young men at the time. And they can feel victorious because Karabakh also has been depopulated. So what started in Baku and what started in earlier in Sumgait and crowned in Baku in pogroms, I think achieved its goal. Karabakh has been, Artsakh has been depopulated of Armenians. So it's a very sad development in our history when you look back. And I certainly cannot subscribe to Pashinyan's point of view now that the entire Karabakh movement was wrong. We shouldn't, and that's essentially the narrative of Azerbaijanis of the time. In even in not only in 1990, but in mid 90s, some of the Azerbaijani propagandists were saying, "Oh, Armenians, you lived so well in Baku. Was it worth it? You lost everything here now." And that continues, I mean, as a rhetoric now. So we can, in Pashinyan's playbook, we can go back to the days before Baku pogroms and Sumgait, and we can live happily ever after with Azerbaijanis. I certainly don't see these things happen that way. And Pashinyan has gone even as far as suggesting that as a bargaining, what if we give up officially on Artsakh and close that page on the return of Armenians to Artsakh, and in exchange, Azerbaijan can stop talking about Western Azerbaijan. But the problem is his false optimism that I don't know if it's he himself believes in that or he is told to believe that. That's a big question. But the problem is that Azerbaijan has no reason to give up on the idea of Western Azerbaijan. Why should they? It's false even in terms of the bargaining negotiation style, right? They already have Artsakh. What are you trading with us? What are you trying to trade? You're
Right.
saying give up on Western Azerbaijan. Why? If we can get it. What started in Sumgait and Baku could have ended very differently for both sides. And I think one of the biggest problems was that in '94, instead of formalizing the outcome of that war, we entered this uh, period of no war nor peace, or low intensity conflict, which culminated in significant disbalance in power, and then mistakes that were made and blunders even made by Pashinyan in 2018 on, resulted in what we have now.
Right. We should not forget that Baku had a rich history of Armenian contributions,
Yes.
churches, our contributions to the industry, the oil industry of Baku, and just culture and science. All of that is gone now. So, I think it's worthwhile to remember. Do you know
Well, I
approximately
mean,
how many Armenians lived in Baku before this event?
yeah, it's estimates because the last census in '89 was not really completed in Azerbaijan and Armenia. It's incomplete census. So we're talking about no less than under 400,000 maybe, in 450,000 in entire Azerbaijan, and that includes various other cities, Ganzak, Shamhor, and other places, apart from Nagorno-Karabakh Autonomous Republic, I'm sorry, Oblast at the time. So we're talking about no less than 250,000 people who may have lived in Baku. But that's an estimate. I cannot say an exact number. But as
Right.
with neighboring Georgia, Tiflis, where Armenians also had a significant contribution in terms of culture of that city, yeah, even the architecture and its current day outlook. The same way Baku. And I think one of the problems is that we Armenians never kind of got the real lessons of this, that without a nation state, doesn't matter where you build it. If it's in a different empire, you may lose all of it. You may one day lose all of it. So back to nation state, I think we are in a very precarious situation right now because what is happening now is not just a threat to Artsakh Armenians who cannot go back to their homeland. It's a threat, it's a direct threat to Armenia itself. Although the regime here is trying to put a brave face and talks about peace, eternal peace. I think what we can see is a window that is not probably a window of opportunity for Azerbaijan to start solving some of the issues militarily, they call Zangezur corridor and whatnot. It's obviously not. Military options are not on the table probably now, but it doesn't rule out that they can be using it, one. And number two, using other means, they are getting what they want anyway. Now that's the whole issue right now. That what started the phase because that conflict was didn't start in 1988. The conflict has prehistory going back to the Russian Empire and even maybe slightly before that. Is getting to a point in time where we either need to mobilize all our resources to keep the nation state, or the threat may materialize, and we can see Western Azerbaijan on the map of the world one day.
Yeah, actually, our concern is that this Iranian conflict may give an opportunity to Aliyev to essentially take over some of the sovereign territories from Armenia, and nobody will be able to do anything about it. We don't see any US or European countries suddenly rushing in with their forces to help Armenia, and Armenia is not interested in anything except the police, not an army.
In international relation terms, you are talking about a new window of opportunity for Armenia.
Right,
As
that's
I
right.
said,
That's right.
it's not there right now, but if the scenario of escalation in Iran and protracted escalation goes on, the value of Azerbaijan, both to Israel and the United States, is going to grow, and therefore he's going to be tempted to perceive it as another opportunity, window of opportunity. He didn't miss the previous one, and he's not likely to miss another one because he's preparing for it. No matter what Pashinyan says here, Aliyev openly says there is no. I mean, he's trying to echo Trump when he says there is no international law and there is no. In some ways, he is right. In
Yeah,
some ways,
that
he's
was part of
right.
his interview, his traditional interview around
Right. And
January 5 or whatever it
if you are
was.
sitting in Yerevan and you are saying, "Oh, it's okay," it's not really about us. But if
Yeah.
international law doesn't exist for your neighbor, what's going to deter him into going into another war with you, a
Yeah.
quick war with you?
And
Nothing.
as they were chanting things, you said, Hovik, when they were doing the Baku pogroms, one of the things they were saying, Baku without Armenians, they got that wish. And for people who are surprised that Armenians put this in a 100-year context, that what's going on with Armenians in Azerbaijan, whether it's in Nagorno-Karabakh, Artsakh, or Baku, Sumgait, or Shahumyan, is just a continuation of the Armenian genocide, a new phase of it. But as I was reading some of the news this morning, one of them struck me, and it was Lindsey Graham saying that, stop the killings, or we will kill, or our president will kill Ali Khamenei. Nothing that rash happened on Russian TV when Vladimir Solovyov was going on a tirade. This is a talk show host on Russian TV. He suggested Russia should do a special military operation in Armenia because it's too important to lose. But I guess what Pashinyan heard was that the Russians wanted to deal with Armenia Merzevov, Russian Zevov. How do you say that? That's right. So in response,
I think Solovyov, we cannot diminish his status. First of all, one of his late night shows is on state television. That's true. Secondly, I think he's gone into more kind of rhetoric, bomb Europeans, kind of even at some points he was start the nuclear World War III and whatnot. So in some ways, he replaced the late Zhirinovsky in his rhetoric. But when it comes to Armenia, I think his relations with Yerevan soured
are
very
strained. That's right.
quickly from the start. And the reasons are many. I don't think they're airing his program, that late night show program on television here. I think they stop it. So in some ways, what he was saying, I mean, I was really puzzled. I could not understand what's this whole storm whirlpool in a glass of water. That's I mean, everybody is talking about Solovyov all of a sudden, and I tried to get what exactly he said. So what exactly he said, he again almost like echoed Trump, right?
Yeah.
So he said there is no international law. The international order is in shambles. It's all about spheres of influence. We need to go and protect our spheres of influence. I mean, he talked about this military operation. If we are doing it in Ukraine, why cannot we do elsewhere? Although he didn't mention that we need to do it in Armenia. He was just saying that about the entire sphere of influence. So we need to be more kind of and even ruthless with Ukrainians, right? No more mercy with Ukrainians. So all of that, as far as I understand, I think is kind of maybe a talk in the corridors of power in Moscow these days, right? But one thing is the rhetoric, another thing is your capabilities, right? What you are capable of doing. I haven't seen. I mean, I'd be hard pressed to mention any Russian intervention, real intervention, that they benefited from. I mean, in the post-Soviet era, maybe there was. I mean, don't mention Belarus because Belarus is even a different state within
Yeah.
the post-Soviet configuration, right? The union state, whatever. So all other cases, they result in less than I'd say beneficial outcomes for the Russian national interest. Whether they're gonna do something like that anywhere, including Armenia, I doubt. That's that instrument that they tried because they do not have many other instruments of how to influence the post-Soviet space, apart from economic trade, which is important instrument. But even that can backfire, right? I mean, so Russia, in some ways, part of the problem that they have is that they don't have a model of development to offer these countries. I mean, the model that they themselves have is not a model of development. It's essentially state capitalism that makes good use of the resources, vast resources that the country has. Small countries like Armenia, even if they try to replicate that, it's not a model of development. So
Yeah.
if you don't have a model of development, no matter what, how you try to influence, you don't have the soft power, real soft power. Culturally, I think the population here in Armenia, Georgia, and I'm sure elsewhere, is not so much into the modern Russian culture. Forget about the classic, the ballet, and maybe literature and many other things, which are kind of still have the influence around the world, to say nothing of the
Yeah.
post-Soviet. But the modern Russian culture is not really attractive. And it's not really an instrument for influence anymore. So they are, in some ways, desperate to find a new way of creating model that will be attractive. When they find it, we'll see it. But for now, they don't.
That is a very interesting thought because we're going to interview an expert on Russian foreign policy, and they're I guess they're thinking about or they write about how Russia sees itself as a Huntingtonian civilization, and if Russia is to be able to remain one of those civilizations, it needs to offer an attractive option for others, small
Right.
states like Armenia as well. And I agree with you on that. But just to close out this incident with Solovyov, it seems like the only thing that Solovyov was able to do was give ammunition to those who are
Yes.
claiming about malign influence and hybrid warfare.
Right. Right.
Ironically, this organization called the Committee to Protect Freedom of Expression in Armenia urged the Armenian government to ban Russian state TV in Armenia. Um, I mean,
Yeah.
I just have to comment on this because there, with all this like arrogant behavior by Trump, even with regard to Armenia, even like disrespecting Pashinyan. There are some politicians who want to rename Armenian towns and places in Trump's name. All of that, just so that the emperor of the world can come and protect Armenia. All of that, doesn't register on these people's radars. But someone like Solovyov can really like trigger them. Anyway, as you said, a storm in a teacup. So. Let's move on. Let's talk a little bit about Pashinyan's attacks against the church. The only thing I want to mention is that since January 1st, his tactics or his strategy has changed to a more institutional nature. He has been communicating a more institutional nature to his attack on the church, starting from that council that he formed with those 10 renegade bishops. And effectively, we have a situation where the church, even when it is able to dismiss a bishop, a head of a diocese, the state will not abide by that decision. The state, in fact, the state is now protecting several different churches where these renegade bishops and dioceses have taken refuge, and is protecting them from the church. And is not saying, and saying basically they're not going to recognize any decision from the Catholicos. Meanwhile, there was a poll recently by MPG which asked a lot of questions about social harmony in the country and solidarity. And 90% of the people responding said that it's upon the church, especially the Archbishop Azerbaijan or the Catholicos, who was number 2, to bring solidarity after all of this. But do you see any off-ramp, whether negotiated or otherwise, that in this situation of Pashinyan versus the Armenian Church, which can restore social harmony, but not yield blanket impunity to other sides? Or are we past the point of no return, where we have to live with a schism in our apostolic church in the foreseeable future?
No, the schism can end if the initiator of that schism is no longer in power. As long as Pashinyan is in power, he's not going to give up on his agenda. That's obvious. That agenda is dictated from outside. It's now pinned to his, as I said, false optimistic sense of peace, right? Because the Armenian Church is a revanchist, one. Number two, the Armenian Church, for now, is the church of all Armenians, not just Armenia. And therefore, that's one other target of Turkey and Azerbaijan, because they want Armenia to be Armenia without the diaspora, right? Okay, diasporans can remain Armenians wherever they are, but they should not have any influence here. So targeting church has different aspects, including the external ones. He himself is going to lose face if he gives up suddenly on this agenda. So value or false values based conflict is very difficult to manage. It's one of the most difficult ones. If it were just about the interests, yeah, I could say, well, we can find a mediated solution here. But it's really about values when you think about it. And it's about interests of the external players who dictate what to do with the church, right? To have the church controlled by the state, essentially, in Armenia. That's what they want. And a church that will be not saying anything that can irritate Aliyev or Erdogan or whatever. So, and if we're saying Artsakh page is closed, the church has no right to speak about Artsakh. So it should be totally under our control. That's his agenda. Then that's what he's doing. And he wouldn't have been successful in what he's doing had the church not had internal problems, right? That's obvious for us. I mean, all the why I'm saying that his campaign is in some ways phony. I'm using that that word even, false and phony, because he himself was criticizing some bishops for corruption. Everybody is talking about this Bentley owner bishop who is now his almost spearheading this process against the Catholicos. And that's okay for him, right? That's okay for him. And he dictates what the churches should be doing or not doing, mentioning Catholicos during the services or not. So it's a pure, kind of, if he was trying to mask before, I was saying, I'm just a citizen. I'm a loyal believer in the Armenian Church. Now that mask has been thrown. He's openly intervening in the matters that are totally of the church. No matter what problems the church has, it's their problems. They have the means to solve their problems themselves. The state has no, I'd say, right, and even constitutional right to intervene the way he's intervening. He's bringing these 10 people, 10 bishops, and he's signing some kind of create some kind of a commission You create that commission as who? As the prime minister? Then we should see the government order that a commission has been formed. There is nothing like that.
But a
Is
commission to
this
do what, Arthur? I mean, the government has no.
a commission to start the reforming of the Armenian Church?
It's not up to the government to do this. It's unconstitutional.
That's what I'm saying.
It should be grounds for impeachment of this
He's
guy.
presiding. He's the first one to sign. But in the government records, if you go now and see what commissions have been created by the Armenian government, there is nothing about that. Right? But so he's trying to play these games, or he goes to the church with his we should call her significant other, because their marriage is not registered, not even forget about church, it's not registered. And according to Armenian Church and many other churches like Catholic or Russian or it doesn't Orthodox, it's a sin, right? It's a sin. So you go with her to ask for the it's a redemption part, right? I mean, so but I'm in the church with the one with whom I'm living in this sin, and this is it's not just absurd when you think about it. It's the apathy of the population here. What can I say? I mean, otherwise, I mean, they should have all been up to. And the fact
Right.
that there is no, he violates the constitutional norms and no consequences of that act.
Right.
Macron was celebrating on December 9th, an important date, 120 years of the law laïcité in France, which formalized the separation of church and state. And all other countries, and including Armenia, have in part followed that understanding. But he is violating that. And no one says he should be stopped, right? He
Right.
should be stopped. It's
But
okay.
that's
It's
my
going
main
on.
complaint. I mean, where's the opposition with its impeachment, supposedly? And not that I expect anything, but nobody's even talking about it. And he is completely unconstitutional in this matter. But I want to move on because I think we need to wrap up. We're over an hour here. So it's time for me to ask to see basically if you have something to share with our listeners. Hovik, I'll come to you first. What's on your mind?
I always surprise myself because I think I have a great interest in how psychological operations work, and from time to time I read material on this topic. But this latest attack against Iran really opened my eyes because even on Twitter X, for instance, there was this post from Reza Pahlavi that while Iran is under a complete internet blockade, it had received 2 million likes, and it was saying like, I'm going to come back and I'm going to take over, and a lot of observers just concluded that this was like bot farms, and I honestly believe that, and I think that Twitter, unfortunately, has shown to be a platform that is now helping those efforts. And one of the other efforts that Twitter is involved in is the head product manager or the head of product at Twitter himself made a change to the code of Twitter where the flag of Iran was replaced with the sun and lion flag from the Shah's time. I mean, it's completely surreal what's happening. So just wanted to tell our listeners and viewers to be wary of whether you're a target of psychological operations, whether individually or en masse. And for me, I decided as a result of this that I'm going to cease my subscription to Twitter. I discontinued my subscription. Unfortunately, it still has several months in it, or maybe until later this year, but I will not be renewing it. So
I'm
and I hope you can
100%
do
with
the
you,
same.
Hovik. And for anyone who believes that you're seeing, some kind of objective truth out there on social media, we got news for you. Everything is curated. What's on your
Yeah.
mind, Arthur?
Well, Prime Minister Pashinyan, I was asking the other day, what is justice? If the courts should be, or the judiciary should be independent from whom? And my answer to that, I'm thinking about this issue for a couple of days now, but I've had the answer immediately. The answer is independent from you, independent from the executive. And I'm just, why I'm saying I'm thinking about this for a couple of days now it's puzzling to me that Armenians here are not really sensitive to this kind of attack, not against, forget about the church, attack against republicanism. You cannot, I mean, I cannot see a leader in any republic, forget about Europeans, who could ask a question, who should the courts be independent from? And I'm not suspecting that he has ever read Rawls or any other major authors on justice and liberal ideas about justice and whatnot. But I was not thinking that we could live after 8 years of promises of kind of new republic, kind of with all the promises made about democracy and whatnot, into the 8th year of that regime. We could hear that the very notion, because when he's asking that question is almost rhetorical, but he's asking the question, why should the courts be independent from me? I mean, this is not the first case where he has shown his interference with the courts. We remember how from the very beginning he was targeting them. And then he was targeting them for corruption. But now he thinks that courts should not be independent. That is really mind-boggling for me, that I'm living in a place now where on paper it's republic, it has a republic square, it has a metro station and whatnot, but it's not a republic. It's not. And it becomes it was a gradual process, but it is now an authoritarian regime, and a very weak authoritarian regime, and that is a threat to our security, a major threat to our security, because that regime won't be able to stand against any major external threats. So that's all I have to say right now. Thank you.
Thank you for your thoughts. Okay.
Thank you,
well,
Arthur.
That's all the time we have. Thank you so much for joining us. We love to hear your insight every time.
Thank you, guys. Good luck.
Talk to you again. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
That was our Week in Review show recorded on January 13, 2026. We've been talking with Arthur G. Martirosyan, who is a senior consultant with CM Partners. And in 1994, after graduating from Yale University, he joined Conflict Management Group and Harvard Negotiations Project, and has since worked on conflicts in the former Soviet Union, the Middle East, the Balkans, Africa, and Latin America. For more information, as always, podcasts.groong.org/episode number. Those are the show notes, and you can find all the bios and other links. We usually put the links to all the articles that we reference in the show as well.
Don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe. And thank you for all of your donations so far. Looking forward to doing more in 2026. In fact, this next 2 weeks, I don't know what happened to us, but we have so many recordings one after another.
Yeah, that's right. We're almost having to say, can't do it right now. Let's talk in a couple of weeks, because it's one recording a day. So you and I have become like a pipeline.
It's more than a full-time job. So if you appreciate what we're doing here, please help us by contributing so that we can just increase our reach. We're not doing this, we're not taking a penny out of this, obviously, but podcasts.groong.org/donate.
It is fun talking to people, though. It's fun talking to people around the world, in every country, and just getting their opinions and stuff. So it's a labor of love.
Our only wish is that our viewership of episodes was 10 times more than it is. I think that both yours and mine. So anyway, hopefully we'll get there. But even if not, we know that we're reaching some of the key people that we intend to reach, including some who we don't consider our friends. But I think that's important as well.
Okay, well, I'm Asbed Bedrosyan, and I'm still in Los Angeles.
And I'm Hovik Manoucharyan in occupied Yerevan.
Talk to you guys soon, next week.
Take care.